What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. After losing to the Patriots, we're officially kicking off our head coach candidate deep dive series. And I wanted to start off with not only who you guys selected, but who I honestly feel like is probably the undisputed top candidate going into this next coaching cycle in Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson would be an absolute dream come true. There's a couple of names that will really excite me, but seeing the consistent elite success that Ben Johnson has had with this Detroit Lions unit since officially being their offensive coordinator in 2022 is absolutely insane. I mean, to find a way to continue to upgrade year after year after year, it's early. And there's a lot that would have to go into this. But I think if you're looking at Ben Johnson's ceiling in terms of the coaching perspective, you could be talking about an Andy Reid type, mind here. Really a generational coach in terms of what he's been able to do. And I've seen a lot of people try to strip the success he's had based on the caliber of players that the Detroit Lions have been able to acquire around him. But when you take a look at what he's done, he's killed it right out of the gate with rookies, and he's also been able to ball out with some veterans at multiple position groups all throughout that roster. So before we dive into really Ben Johnson, what he is, who he is, the scheme, a bunch of things to highlight there, we have to start off with two questions. One, Ben Johnson has been one of the most, if not the most, sought after candidate to become a head coach since 2022, and he's declined to join another team in back-to-back years. Why? The second piece would essentially be the follow-up to that is, can Woody Johnson find a way to persuade and show Ben Johnson that this is the perfect opportunity for him? Now, to answer the first question, when I dug into it a little bit, I seen that there was a bunch of weird stuff going on, right? For one, I heard that the asking price Ben Johnson was wanting for his, rookie head coach contract was insanely high. And that was part of the reason why there was hesitancy with teams like the Panthers, teams like the Commanders. Apparently he was asked for like $15 million per year, which, that's like a top 10 rookie contract, right? But I seen that his agent denied that. So if we want to strip that away and just get that done and over with, the second piece is that he spoke on this himself already. He wants to find the perfect situation for himself, and he's in no rush, right? He's seen over the years that, head coaches that may not have been as prepared as they can be, they've fallen flat and they've essentially had to hit the reset button from all over. He's going into his next head coaching gig with the mentality that I'm going to make sure I can earn my secondary contract. And I love it, right? A specific quote that I seen from him was what he's looking for in this next opportunity. It's ownership, it's staff, it's my vision of how I can make it work with how I know I am. And one of the other pieces that's a huge factor into this as well is that Ben Johnson wants to try to get that Super Bowl with the Lions. It's the best way to walk off into the sunset going into your next, your first and next head coach opportunity if you're Ben Johnson, right? And then you can really ask for the moon, the stars, the sun, etc. there, because on paper you check off every single box that you possibly can. The second piece is, and this goes more so for us in the outside world looking in, a lot of teams, a lot of people and fans, they're going to say the New York Jets are a complete circus, which I can't combat, but more so the fact that owner Woody Johnson will be a pivotal reason why we don't land him, right? We know Woody to be overzealous, overbearing, always butting his head into places where he does not have the expertise to make a reasonable and sound decision. And we also know, partly due to our fault as well, if you want to put it there, that Woody Johnson tends to cave to fan pressure quite a bit. And you can look at the Robert Saleh firing as evidence of that. You can take a look at the multiple veterans that generally have been at positions of need that we've gone out there and sold the farm for to get. And it's been guys on the downward trend of their career and guys that you've seen potentially being on the downward trend for a number of years. It's been more misses than hits, it feels like, for some of these veterans that we've given big money contracts to and blockbuster trade deals for. But I would also say, in that same token, If you look at the other side of that coin, there's no better partner than Woody Johnson, because he is going to spare no expense to make sure you have zero to none excuses for why you could get the job done. And so if you're Ben Johnson, you're potentially looking at a high draft pick. You're potentially already have some very talented members of your core offensive structure on the team, young guys, potentially some veterans, types that are going to be mixed in here that you can get really excited about. And so I would also argue, as long as Ben Johnson can sell a clear vision to Woody Johnson's going to open up the checkbook. He's going to stand back. And then from there, it's the Ben Johnson show. And you have to be hyped for that reality if we can make it come true. Now, what are we looking at with Ben Johnson, right? 38 years old. The age is a huge thing to me, because if I'm looking at a successful head coach, I want him with me for 20 plus years, right? I want a Bill Belichick type career, an Andy Reid type career, a Mike Tomlin type career out of whoever I'm signing next. And so when I heard that Ben Johnson was looking to earn his second contract out of the gate, it kind of goes without being said. But the fact that he said it meant a lot to me. So seeing that he's only 38 years old going into 39, you're talking about him being 60 something, which for my Todd Monken fans, he's already, I want to say 58, if not 64, I think being the number that I actually saw. So he has a lot of time to be here and be successful with New York. 12 years of coaching experience. One of the things that I really love, two factors about Ben Johnson actually, is one, he has that player experience, a former walk-on QB for University of North Carolina. The second piece is he was retained by multiple people across multiple teams, right? Once with Dan Campbell, and then another time with Adam Gase. Two separate teams. It was the reason I loved Brant Boyer as a special team guy, right? And I think it speaks highly towards the outside perspective, right? The general consensus in the NFL that you have a quality guy at this position if you're not looking to immediately move on and fill it with your trusted circle, right? Some of that in rare situations is just limited options, timing issues, etc. for why that can't get done. But in Ben Johnson's case, I would make the argument that he was just the best man for the job at that time with these new head coaches coming in. So I really love those two factors about him. Now, when you take a look at his coaching history, started things off in Boston College as an offensive graduate assistant. Then he makes his way to the Miami Dolphins, where he becomes an offensive assistant or quality coach for them. Spends a couple years there, right, as an assistant QB coach with Tannehill during some of his best years with the Dolphins. And then he becomes a wide receiver coach, where he works some magic with Jarvis Landry during the course of the early tenure of his career, right? Then, of course, he becomes the guy that we know now with the Lions. Starts off as a tight end coach with them before working his way up to offensive coordinator. And since then, he's just been detonating in the league. I mean, it's hard to find a team that can consistently place in the top 5 in a lot of the same metrics, a lot of the key metrics in back-to-back years. But it's not just the surface level stuff that we love to see, like the passing yards, the rushing totals, the touchdowns through the air on the ground. Those, for my, stat freaks, the EPA metrics, the, value over expected and all that kind of stuff, they rank just as well. Like sometimes they do a ridiculous amount. For example, the Vikings game was one where the Vikings defense was just completely undermining offenses throughout the entirety of this 2024 season. Had like a minus 0.4 or something, whatever the case is. But the Detroit Lions went in and just ransacked the Vikings, and they had a plus 0.7 or something like that total by the time it was all said and done. Ben Johnson's just put on masterful performance after performance, and I can't get enough of watching how the Detroit Lions go out there and roll out things, because they have their bread and butter in the run game. They have their go-to receiver in the receiving game, but he finds a way to mix and match things, and more often than not, they're winning, with 30-plus points on the board. But even in a lot of those gritty games, he has a calling card up his sleeve, right? So if we want to, and by the way, before we get into this, I want to talk about some of the scheme stuff real quick. One of the other quotes that he put out there that I loved in terms of expectations potentially right out the gate for him if nothing changes is he mentioned, part of me, I love play calling. If I took a head coaching job, I would want to be a play calling head coach. Now, he also threw in there some stuff about having to adjust, of course, to coaching the entire team as opposed to just one side of the football and figuring out what that balance and how that looks like. But Ben Johnson has my trust at this point, 100%. Scheme-wise, one of the things that really intrigues me is that we're going from a coach in Nathaniel Hackett and a QB in Aaron Rodgers that they are West Coast to death, right? This West Coast offense, the purest version of this West Coast offense is what they dived into, and obviously we've seen what that looks like on the field for us now. But with Ben Johnson, you're really getting a non-scheme specific, like if you put this up on Madden, it's probably just going to say multiple power run, right? There's philosophies from all over the place. He doesn't really have a designated coaching tree after working under so many coaches. And this really works to his favor. When you want to talk about some of these guys and you say fit your scheme around the talent, Ben Johnson is literally one of the very few guys that can honestly say that fits on paper. It fits on film when you break down and look at what the Lions pull off on a week-to-week basis. They could look like a West Coast run-oriented team one week. They could look like an air raid offense the next. They could look like a power run team. They can look like they just have a million scat backs on the roster one week. They can air it out. They can, dissect and kill in the short passing game. It's really a thing of beauty. One of the things that I admire the most, and I took a look at a great film breakdown video just to, kind of build further on what I've already seen from afar. He has packages on the man might as well have a FedEx shirt on. He has so many packages of plays that build off of each other, packages and plays that build off specific players and what those players can do on the team. And one of the best examples I can put out there is Sam Laporta, right? Killed it in his rookie season, broke all kind of records for a rookie tight end. This year, he's been much more lackluster when you just look at the stat production. But when you look at how he's been able to use Laporta, even though he hasn't been getting the ball, to manipulate defenses, when he has had strong games, when he has had impactful moments in the game from a stat sheet perspective, it's been huge games, some very strong games on his end. So, David Montgomery has a package. Jahmyr Gibbs has a package. Sam Laporta has his. You take a look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. He even gets his tackles factored into some of the play calling. And when I mentioned him having an ace up his sleeve, this is a guy that's really had fun and been able to master the idea of the trick play to where it's not just a gadget thing anymore. It's a elite functional part of how they can help facilitate some instant offense, some devastating offense in crucial times that are needed to really help give that team the boost that they want. Simplifies his read for the quarterback. I think that was one of the biggest things that helped out Jared Goff, right? Used heavy motions at the snap. He's mixing in play action. He has RPOs. He just has the full trick bag, right? If you wanted to look at a playbook and say, here's all the things I want to do, you probably hear some pushback like, hey, we can't actually pull all of these off. But the way he's layered his playbook, the way he's set things up to look the exact same and a completely different, action can occur, gives him the perfect opportunity to be able to do just that. And that's what really excites me the most, is that you're not getting a stale playbook out of Ben Johnson. For 3 years now, teams have been figuring out and trying their best to see what makes this offense tick, how they can eliminate certain guys, and really, snap the Achilles heel of this Detroit Lions team. And Ben Johnson's been able to outmaneuver all of them, and I think that's a huge calling card in what could be a successful head coach. Now, you take a look at the rest of what he's been able to pull off so far. Since joining the Lions, it's the Detroit Lions third coaching staff in team history to win multiple playoff games. It's also the first coaching staff to do that since 1957, which is insane. I can only imagine him coming to the Jets and some of the records that he'd be instantly breaking in a season if we're getting the same kind of success, right? 5 of 7 Pro Bowlers are coming from the offensive side of the ball. When you take a look at Dan Campbell and his defensive philosophy, and obviously that being his bread and butter, you would expect, like you saw with the Robert Saleh, like you've seen with the Raheem Morris, probably like you'll see with Gerard Mayo and some of these other defensive guys, that side of the ball generally gets the bigger boost, right? They're in control of things. They know how to get that side of the ball to operate efficiently right out the gate. And the Detroit Lions aren't barren of defensive talent on that side. So I think that also speaks very well into the confidence and ability that Ben Johnson's been able to do on the offensive side. Completely reverse Jared Goff's career. To be a former high draft pick and to see your career not pan out with the team that chose you, it is so easy to snowball into oblivion. But Ben Johnson has done one of the sickest turnarounds consistently. That's the change, right? I said this for guys after 1 year, and then it's ended up biting me in the butt in other destinations or with the Jets. The fact that Jared Goff has looked like a quietly elite quarterback for 3 years now under Ben Johnson's tutelage is nuts. I would honestly argue that once you get past your Patrick Mahomes, your Lamar Jacksons, your Joe Burrows, and maybe with Joe Burrow being kind of the outlier there as well, Jared Goff is right there. He might not have all the same physical abilities, and that really what separates Patrick Mahomes and Lamar. Out of the guys that don't have an elite calling card to their name, Jared Goff is that guy. That in and of itself is huge to me. You take a look at some of the insane stuff that he's been able to do with Jared Goff. 324 consecutive passes without an interception in 2022 at one point. This year, he looks like an MVP candidate. I don't think he's ranked worse than 4th in any particular metric, and I think the worst one for him might be throws under pressure, potentially. But for him to still be one of the best quarterbacks this year is insane. Yeah, the Lions definitely should still be a heavily favored Super Bowl team at this point, and it's directly due to how he's been able to limit Jared Goff's mistakes. It's been how he's been able to get Jared Goff to include everybody within the offense. You can't just pinpoint and take out Amon-Ra St. Brown because he figures out a way to get the running backs going. And if it's not on the ground, it's in the receiving game. And if he can't do that, he can go to another weapon in Laporta. And if he can't do that, he can lean on Jameson Williams, or he can lean on a young rookie that he needs to get going a little quicker than maybe they want to. And that's money, right? You can't ask for better than that. I don't know what it would take to bring Ben Johnson, but I would say by all means, Woody Johnson should sell out for him. There's a lot of great coaching candidates here, but for 2 years now, probably Ben Johnson has been the guy that if we had to sacrifice anybody on this roster, I would be more so ready and willing and fully supported behind getting it done. You take a look at the various stars that he's worked with at all levels to kind of cap things off here. You can't just say, well, his receivers are great, or, the offensive line is great. A lot of this stuff wasn't in place or wasn't working right when he got there. So for the people that say, well, they built a great team for him, you still got to get that great team to operate, right? Jets, Detroit Lions, both teams with great rosters on paper, right? If you just had to do a fantasy draft and look at it, you're drafting a lot of guys from both of these rosters in the top rounds, right? 2 vastly different stories here. So that excuse is one that always annoys me quite a bit. But offensive line, Frank Ragnow at center, Penei Sewell at tackle. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver. You had Jarvis Landry with him when he was with the Dolphins. You have TJ Hawkinson. Now you have Sam Laporta. Excuse me. Just Sam Laporta. I don't know why Hawkinson got thrown in there. But then now you also have Jared Goff. Ryan Tannehill was looking like a Pro Bowl type player and stuff for him as well at one point. There's too many good things to say, right? I could dive into stats all day about what he's made Jared Goff look like this year. What Jahmyr Gibbs has done is looking like a satisfactory first round draft pick, being able to include other members in that running game, Montgomery, the tight end position not being forgotten. The trick plays I really love. And normally I'm not a huge gadget guy, but it's one that I think, again, he's mastered. And it's just something you look at with him as a staple of the offense. I mean, for God's sake, he almost had Penei Sewell get a rushing touchdown, and I think also a reception at one point, either within the same game or just over the course of this season. And if it wasn't for a penalty, there's a lot that he's been able to pull off. And with the high draft picks, the moves that I'm sure we'll be able to pull off to help round out a roster that still, again, will have some strong pieces in place, he could be in a great situation just from a talent perspective walking into it. So I'll leave it here. I don't want to make this like a 45-minute video or anything. I think we're around the 20-ish minute mark now. So this is good to kind of cut things off. But let me know what you guys think. What are the best reasons to hire a Ben Johnson? What are the worst reasons to hire a Ben Johnson? And, love it or hate it, what are your thoughts around this? And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.